I'm going to move right into our panel discussion now, called Indigenous Wisdom and Intuition. Manari is sitting on the panel, Roberta and Rimma, and Paul, can you join us, please? Rimma is our moderator, and she is the CEO of her own company called Dialogue, specializing, in my words, in emotional communications, which is where we want people here. Sometimes I describe the work I do as taking people along the longest journey of their life, which is 18 inches from their head to their heart. We want this to be an emotional experience intentionally. I hope you'll open your hearts and listen.
Thanks, Greg. So this, I don't even know where to begin. As Greg said, I run a company called Dialogue. A lot of my work stems on the intersection of intuition and decision-making. And over the past few years, the piece about intuition has been very near and dear to my heart because I'm realizing how much the world is disconnected from our own bodies. And so when Greg and I started talking about what could this panel be at this conference and in general kind of about our backgrounds and our passions, it seemed very natural that this kind of conversation, not only can it happen here, but it must happen here. Okay. Good. Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll have a little bit of a delay because of translation, but all in service of a fantastic conversation. So I'm super excited to be here today. We're going to be together for about 35 minutes. And between Paul, Roberta, and Manari, we'll be talking about intuition and indigenous wisdom, as Greg said. I'd love to have everyone introduce themselves first, and then we'll get into the conversation. And even though this is a panel, I will say that we're going to have a conversation as though we are all sitting together at a single dinner table. So maybe, Paul, perhaps you can start.
Certainly. Good morning, everybody. My name is Paul Rahilly. I am co-founder of CTR Foundation. My work in the Amazon began just over 3 years ago when I met a young leader of a nation called the Ushigua Nation. And they live in the Brazilian Amazon in a key biodiversity area right next to the border with Peru. And a key biodiversity area is one where the rainforest is pristine. And what I learned very quickly from the Ushigua was their deep spiritual connection to nature. They don't view themselves separate to nature, they view themselves part of nature. And what they've shown on all their indigenous sister nations is that they're de facto guardians of the rainforest. I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay. Roberta?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Roberta Vasnic. I'm an architect coming from the UK. I started my company, my architecture practice, as a rebellious act against the system. I was completely against business as usual, and after working for many years in a large architecture practice, I realized that I was living a life against my values, going every year into the office and realizing that everything that I'm doing is actually prolonging exploitative practices. But I also really believed in the transformative power of architecture and how it guides our lives and how it influences our emotions. So at a pivotal point in my life, I have met Manari on my journey to Ecuador, and has invited me into the intimacy of his family in the Amazon, where connecting with the Sapara nation has allowed me to reflect on the internal disaster that was happening inside of me, where I was completely against where the direction in which architecture was going, but at the same time not feeling that my voice is being heard. And I felt, which I think is a feeling that most of us today can relate to, completely hopeless. And I was feeling that the world that I grew up in is no longer the world that I'm experiencing today, and is not the legacy of future that we leave for future generations. So Manari and the Sapara nations has allowed me to process grief. And there are a few things that I would like to bring to discussion today on how we can integrate indigenous knowledge into processing the direction that the climate is exacerbating, and the direction which we're going together as a community forwards, and the legacy that we leave for future generations. I'll leave it to that.
Thank you. Roberta, do you want to say anything about Manari?
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Although Greg did justice to introducing Manari in a very special way, I would like to add to that, to expand on that. Manari's mission, as I have witnessed and experienced, and we have experienced just briefly today, his mission is to walk into the world and bring the messages of the jungle and share them with all of us. Even though not all of us has a chance to go into the Amazon and connect with the wisdom of the Amazon, Manari's mission is to share that wisdom and connect us with the universe, to create a new vision and align us with that new vision in order to move together harmoniously, and to create a greater benefit, not just for us human beings, but for our other than human relatives.
Thank you all. I want to kind of kick us off with passing it on to Manari for a moment. You know, we're living in this very interesting moment right now where everyone is talking about is AI, and we are forgetting that there's so many other intelligences at our disposal that we could be using to think through planetary consciousness and our ability to make decisions with and co-evolve with technology. And so, in advance of like some of these themes that we've been living through day to day, I would love to hear from Manari in terms of some of the methodologies and thoughts that he's got around this kind of notion of economy and ecology and the interplay between the two things as we think about the Western world and the indigenous wisdom and how they interplay. So Manari, I'm going to pass it over to you for a few minutes.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Me gustaría
I would like to
explicarles a
explain
ustedes.
to you,
Nosotros desde la selva
us from the jungle,
estamos viendo
we look
el sistema
at the
económico que
economic
hemos
system
creado,
that we have created,
y yo también incluyo en esa creación.
and I include myself in that creation.
Y hemos hecho una estructura,
We have built a structure
visto desde el mundo espiritual, el sistema económico.
seen from the spiritual world. The economic system
Es una casa de 5 pisos.
is a 5-floor house.
Y entonces en esa casa no alcanzamos todos.
So in that house, we don't all fit.
Por eso existe en la sociedad existe la pobreza.
That's why in society, poverty exists.
Lo que nosotros estamos viendo, la vida de las plantas.
What we are seeing, the life of the plants.
Las plantas
The plants
viven en la
live
selva todos juntos.
All together in the jungle.
Y ellos crearon un sistema de vida,
And they
vivir
created
juntos
a system to live together
y sin pelearse
and without fighting
y sin enojarse.
and without getting angry.
Y que no exista la pobreza en ese sistema de vida
And in
de
that
la selva.
system, poverty doesn't exist.
Entonces, por eso, lo que hemos estudiado muy bien ese sistema de la vida
So that is why we've studied the system of life very well.
y hemos encontrado que la palabra economía
And we have found that the word economy
quiere decir administración del hogar, ¿no?
means the administration of the home.
Eso ustedes saben. Entonces, lo que queremos es que la energía
What we want is that the energy
del sistema económico queremos llevar al hogar más grande.
of the economic system we take to the bigger home.
El hogar más grande, la casa más grande
The
es
bigger home
la ecología.
is the ecology.
Dentro de la ecología estamos viviendo todos los seres
Within
humanos,
ecology, we're living all the living beings.
otros
Human,
seres como
other living beings.
las mismas plantas, animales,
like plants and animals,
el agua, el aire.
water, air.
Entonces, si hacemos esa transición de
So-
pasar de una casa de 5 pisos,
If we make that transition of moving from a house
Pasamos-
of 5 floors
pasamos a una casa más grande
to a bigger house
que es el planeta Tierra.
that is planet Earth.
Eso es lo que nosotros hemos visto desde el mundo espiritual.
That is what we have seen from the spiritual world.
Es necesario hacer eso
It
Por-
is necessary to do this
porque nosotros sabemos que muchas personas dicen que hay muchas especies en el mundo está desapareciendo.
because we know that many people around the world say that many species are disappearing.
No, no están desapareciendo ellos.
They're not disappearing.
Ellos lo que están haciendo es vivir de una forma, de una
They
característica
are
animal,
living in a, what they're doing is that they're living in a special form of an animal,
y están transformando en otro ser.
and they are transforming into another being.
Entonces, esa transición
So that transition
de ser un tigre
From being a
y
tiger.
transforman una planta.
and
Viven
becoming
como
a
una
plant.
planta. Entonces, en esa planta guarda sus células
In that
principales.
plant, it guards its cells.
Entonces, cuando el mundo se va a estabilizar otra vez,
So when
de
the
esa
world is going to
planta
stabilize again,
otra vez van a transformar en el animal que existía.
from that plant, it's again going to transform into the animal that existed.
Entonces, eso va a pasar con nosotros también, con los humanos.
So that is also going to happen with us human
Y
beings.
por eso tenemos que cuidar este hogar gigante que es el planeta Tierra
And that is why we have to take care of this home that is called planet
para
Earth
regresarnos otra vez.
to come back.
Eso es lo que puedo decir. Gracias.
That's it. Thank you.
What I'd like to, if I may, just interject a tiny bit, helping in sort of understanding and expanding what Manari was mentioning. When Manari is talking about the house, we are under the false impression that house just refers to the physical embodiment of our home. But what Manari is inviting us is to expand our vision, our perspective into understanding that our house is actually a whole planet, our whole planet and the whole biome. And he's inviting us to acknowledge that we are the guardians of this home. And we are the last generation that can actually do something and leave a healthy legacy for future generations. The other thing that Manari is pointing out is about the interconnectedness of all beings, that we are part of a living system. And for far too long, we went on a different direction. And this direction has completely separated us and has drawn a line between us and nature. And as Paul was mentioning, in the Amazon, in the Amazonic communities, they believe in the interconnected of all things, that we are nature. And all the answers that we are seeking for are actually within us. The other point was about transition. And in Indigenous, and especially in the Sapara wisdom, it's talking about this life cycle and realigning us with this life cycle. When we're talking about transition, is about hospicing an old system to flourishing and blooming to something else. And this is what we're doing today here. Is where we are taking an old system and we are adding the wisdom that we have for far too long put behind us, because thinking is too ancient. But it's ancient wisdom that is finding new expressions. And we've come to a point today in which we can merge innovation and tradition, indigenous wisdom, and a new economic system. A new economic system that is about abundance over scarcity. And I think I'm gonna leave it to that. There are a few more points that I would like to expand. I narrowed down to 5 principles of indigeneity that I would like to share with you today. But I'd like to hear more about what Paul is doing in the other side of the Amazon, on the Brazilian border, and what are some of the initiatives that he's leading there, and some of the wisdom that he's bringing to our discussion today.
Thank you, Roberta. So I think a common theme, what I've heard this morning here, is guardianship, stewards of nature. And what I kind of inferred in my introduction is that Indigenous people across the Amazon basin have done a really good job at preserving, when they have recognized territories, at preserving the biodiversity in their territory. So I mentioned I started work 3 years ago. When I met this young leader, Chief Isku from the Yuanawa, he shared his life plan with me. And the life plan represented their view, looking into the future, what they're going to do with their younger generation coming up, but with a firm footing in the past with their traditions, their ancestral traditions. And so we started working in earnest with this life plan on a pilot project. So we spent the next 2 years planning, organizing, financing, and executing a pilot project. It was a $1 million pilot project. It was called New Hope Project. It was named after Chief Isku's village of New Hope. And it really focused on 2 main aspects to assist these guardians. The first major overarching aspect of the project was to focus on enabling them to be self-sufficient. So energy independent and transportation independent. And the energy independence was from fossil fuels. The fossil fuel has to be transported about 3,000 miles. Imagine that. It's their biggest living expense, using gasoline for transportation, diesel for generators. So we wanted to eliminate this dependency by installing solar. So we put solar in for 35 families. We put in a solar power bank. The solar power bank was designed to be able to recharge electric vehicles. So either an electric ATV or an electric riverboat. We're in the process of converting the riverboats. The families now have electricity in their homes and LED lighting for the first time in their lives. They have refrigeration. And then in San Diego, CTR is based in San Diego, we built a prototype of an electric riverboat. So these riverboats are very noisy. When you're traveling down the river, you're scaring away all the birds because of this loud gasoline engine. You're polluting, you're doing noise pollution, you're doing air pollution, and it's kind of like they just really dislike using these, but it's an essential need for them. So we built this electric vehicle prototype. We have the solar power bank in place in the village. The second aspect of New Hope Project is to really focus on their culture, right? Preserving their culture, because like we said, they're guardians of nature. It's endemic, and they intuit music directly from the birds, from the animals. They have plant medicine knowledge that's just incredible. It allows you to really connect deeply with nature. So we're enhancing their culture by building schools of tradition. We have a cultural center under construction in New Hope Village. We have a wonderful donor here in the audience who donated the money to enable this cultural center. And the end game for preserving their culture is to really promote the idea of connection to nature, biosphere or biodiversity conservation. And really what we have with the indigenous people in the Amazon is a veritable army of frontline, boots on the ground, if we provide them with the resources to be able to become that, intentional guardians of the Amazon.
So I'm curious, I mean, a lot of the way that the work is happening in the geography of the culture that you're working with, right?
Correct.
How do you see it expanding into more into the Western world? So there's almost like a case and a use case of how might this live in other indigenous communities and perhaps affect them in that way. And I'm also really curious how did you? I mean, it's one thing to be exposed by going for a week or two or a month or so, but I think there's I think between you and Roberta, you both spend so much time within the geographies that you're kind of working with. How did you know that this was the thing that you're creating with your resources? Like when you came upon it, and how does that knowledge manifest into the thing that you're actually creating through CTR as you speak?
Great question. Thank you. Well, I mean, I'll try and be very brief with this answer. I went to the Amazon for the first time 20 years ago, and it completely changed my life. The presence of nature, the energy of nature, the presence of the biodiversity there. I became inspired. It just became a life mission of mine to be able to participate in this way. So I brought my own personal experience from construction management, from engineering, from working in the energy industry here in the West, my mechanical engineering background, to define the project. We're looking for sponsors. We have a partner who's a pioneer in carbon bonds. So to go back to your question, how can people in the West participate? Carbon bonds started 15 years ago, and they haven't really worked out because the benefit of a carbon bond does not go through to the indigenous. And we've really designed New Hope project and a new type of bond. It's called an indigenous-led nature bond, to ensure that a Western investor or any type of investor that wants to invest in nature, the money will go transparently to a trust that will be controlled by the indigenous themselves. I think that's the biggest complaint, if you will, that the indigenous have. They're pleading to the West, saying, please, whatever initiatives you have, make sure the benefit flows down to us. And I think that was a huge shortcoming. The UN recognizes that with their global biodiversity framework. They're saying we have to have new ways for the West to participate, to make sure the money, the financial resources goes to the front line. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Roberta, how about you? I'm curious. Well, there's many things we can talk about, but I wanted to touch on kind of a similar moment, because it's so easy for us to say, "Oh, we're helping over there somewhere," And I think there's a difference in how you both are embedded in the culture and in the spirit of what's happening in various communities. And I'm just curious how that's manifested in the work that you're doing in the Western world, and how you're bringing that out into here.
Thank you. I think one thing that Manari has brought to our awareness is that not everybody can go to the Amazon, right? But in order to tap into the wisdom of the Amazon, we can connect with our own local ecology. And that holds the wisdom that we need to regenerate and build for abundance for both human and other than human relatives. And I think the question really is, what's in it for us? Why should we care about the Amazon? Why should we protect the Amazon? Or why should we invest in indigenous-led projects and indigenous-led initiatives? And what really is the takeaway from indigenous communities? Well, indigenous communities have been at forefront of climate change for millennia, and they have shown incredible skill of adaptability and resilience. We, unfortunately, in our society today, we moved towards prioritizing innovation. And I think LA urban planning grid is really a testimony of that, where it's been prioritized automobile and at the expense of community. But we have a unique opportunity here. We have a unique opportunity to rebuild and to reconnect with our ecosystem and to reconnect with our values. And what are the indigenous sort of takeaways that we can take in bringing regenerative practices at the whole heart, at the heart of regeneration, of rebuilding? Well, the first one is respect for biodiversity. What really actually means is to embed to embed our homes, rebuilding after the fire, to embed them into the local ecosystem, to create a circular motion between our homes and our plot of land and the whole neighborhood. It's all about this circularity, and circularity refers to keeping the gift in motion. That is no longer the benefit just for human beings, but we can actually give something back. The second thing is resource management. Indigenous communities are incredible at harvesting and supporting the livelihoods in a place that we tend to romanticize the Amazon, but it really isn't an easy life. And building comfort into such environment, you're very exposed, you're very vulnerable, but that vulnerability is what we've been missing, because that vulnerability brings a lot of humbleness. This holistic outlook of understanding where your resources are and utilizing to the best ability your local resources has really brought attention to community, and the community is the most resilient resource that we have, and you have it here in this room as we all come together. The other thing is intergenerational transmission. What I have witnessed in the Saparas and other indigenous communities is how they share information across different generations. What that ensures is that leaving a long-standing healthy legacy for the next generation to build onto. And it's also about bringing your awareness to creating nested ecosystems. And all of that stems down to re-evaluating wealth and valuing communal rather than individual wealth. Bring back the community, bring back circularity, bring back awareness of local resources, and utilize local resources to their best ability, and also allow regeneration to happen. And all of this comes down to fostering a sense of belonging and long-term wellness for the whole of the ecosystem that we are part of.
And you're in the design and architecture space, right? So how do these 5 principles that you spoke about manifest in a physical form? Would that be the right? Yeah.
So I'm conscious also of the time, but we will be expanding on these 5 principles of indigeneity tomorrow in a different panel discussion, in which we'll be looking at implementing these indigenous principles through architecture to rebuild the areas devastated by disaster. So I think we will be exploring that in more detail tomorrow.
Okay, great. Manari, I'm curious from you, as you're hearing us talk about the different things that are resonating, what's resonating for you as whenever you come here into the Western world and sort of are in a completely different environment, seeing the reactions to the work that you're doing and building? And how do you see yourself kind of in the future how do you see the traditions and the wisdoms that you're sharing kind of manifest in so that we can bring them out and in between the Amazon and here?
Lo que yo veo,
What I see,
lo que yo siento, lo que
what I
están
feel,
diciendo,
when you speak these words,
es algo que nosotros tenemos que entendernos.
is something that we have to understand.
Los pueblos indígenas,
The indigenous town
nuestros ancestros,
and our
siempre
ancestors,
nos han dicho que
always
nuestra
told us
vida
that
tiene que ser
our
como,
life
como viven las plantas,
has to be like plants live,
juntos,
Together.
todos juntos, sin
everybody
pelearse,
together,
sin
Without-
causar problemas.
without causing any troubles.
Entonces,
So
nosotros siempre tenemos ese principio,
we always have that principle,
porque para nosotros
Because
la
for us,
vida es uno.
life
Decimos,
is singular.
es nukaki, se llama en nuestro idioma, nukaki,
It's
uno.
nokaki.
La energía de nukaki
The energy of Nokaki,
lo que nos une es a todos los seres que vivimos en la selva,
what unites all of the living beings within the jungle.
tenemos que cuidarnos
We have to take care of
mutuamente.
ourselves.
Y de esa forma de cuidar es lo que
And
nos
taking care of each other
dio hasta ahora
is what has given us the capacity until now
mantener a la selva como tenemos con
to
nosotros,
maintain the
sin
jungle as it
destrucción,
is, without destruction.
y estamos corriendo ahí entre los árboles,
We can run between the
escuchando
trees,
el sonido de los árboles,
hear the sound of the trees,
y eso nos ha dado mucha
and that has given us a lot
seguridad de la vida a
of
nosotros.
security about life.
Entonces,
So,
pero la evolución humana, como
the human evolution,
nosotros hemos evolucionado conjuntamente con la selva,
we have evolved with the jungle completely.
pero la otra evolución
But
del
the other
mundo
evolution
moderno
of the modern world
ha hecho de una manera lo que se avanzó hasta ahora,
has done what has advanced until now.
y eso reconocemos mucho.
And we recognize that.
Y necesitamos esa sabiduría,
And we need that knowledge,
llevar hacia la selva,
take it to the jungle,
pero no queremos llevar la energía del mundo moderno
but we don't want to elevate the energy of the
para
modern world
destruir a la selva.
to destroy the jungle.
Eso sí no queremos.
That's what we don't want.
Y por eso estamos trabajando mucho la forma de entender la economía,
And that is why we are working
Otra
the manner
manera de-
of understanding the
o-
economy.
otra manera de entender la economía para seguir cuidando a la selva.
Another way of understanding economy to take care of the jungle.
Entonces, la Roberta decía que
So Robert was saying
todas las personas no pueden ir a la selva
that not everybody can go to the jungle
para vivir y para entender una transformación personal.
to live a personal transformation.
Entonces, este lugar para mí, Los Ángeles,
So this place, LA, for me,
es otra selva.
is another jungle.
Y en esta selva
And in
tenemos
this
que
jungle,
activar
we have to activate
la energía de la selva.
the energy of the jungle.
Porque si nosotros no activamos esa energía de la selva,
Because if we don't activate that energy of the jungle,
la tierra nos va a castigar,
Earth is gonna punish us.
como lo pasó aquí. Trajo el fuego y le quemó las casas.
Like it happened here. The fire was brought and it burned the homes.
Y eso nos da un mensaje de que nosotros tenemos que despertar nuestra conciencia.
And that gives us a message that we have to wake up our conscience.
Algo no estamos haciendo bien.
We're not doing something right.
Entonces, despertar esa conciencia
So wake
y
up that conscience
activar la energía de los ángeles
and activate the energy of LA,
y la fuerza va a cambiar.
and the strength is going to change.
La forma de vivir, la forma
The
de
way of living,
conectarse con la tierra,
the
con
way
los
of connecting with
alimentos,
earth and with
con la
food,
sabiduría,
with knowledge,
va a cambiar.
it's going to change.
Entonces, mi reflexión
So my
con la
reflection
pregunta que me estabas haciendo,
with the question that you've made,
nosotros agradecemos mucho el
We are
avance de
thankful
tecnología que se
for
ha
the
hecho en el mundo
technological
moderno,
advancement,
porque
because
las cosas que se ve en mundo espiritual
what we see in the spiritual world
y se ha materializado en este mundo.
has become material in this world.
Esa es una civilización humana,
That is a
lo que
human
hemos
civilization.
logrado para seguir cuidando nuestra vida. Así estamos viendo desde la selva.
Because we have accomplished things to keep taking care of our lives.
Entonces, tenemos que compartir estas sabidurías
So we have to share these two knowledges
y abrazarnos entre nosotros como humanos
and hug each other like humans
para ayudarnos mutuamente.
to help each other mutually.
Y
And
por eso
that is
el
why
mundo indígena se abrió su sabiduría.
the indigenous world has opened
Porque
their
antes
knowledge.
la sabiduría indígena estaba en la selva, escondido.
Because before, indigenous knowledge used to be only in the jungle.
Y nosotros hemos abierto nuestro corazón, con nuestros antepasados,
But we have opened our heart with our ancestors
para ayudarnos a entendernos los dos,
to help understand
los dos
each other,
mundos,
the two worlds,
para hacer un solo mundo.
to make one singular world.
Y cada acción que hagamos nosotros
that we do,
como humanos,
by being humans,
el resultado de eso tiene que ser una medicina para nosotros.
the result has to be a medicine for ourselves.
Si una acción no es una medicina para nosotros,
If an
entonces,
action
esa acción no es buena.
If an action is not a medicine for us, then that action is not good.
Eso es lo que tenemos que cuidar mucho.
That's why we have to be careful
Entonces, esta acción que el hermano al fondo que está ahí, él estaba hablando,
that action
la
that you're
ayuda
doing,
que está dando hacia la selva,
the help that you're doing for the jungle,
y esa ayuda es con una sabiduría de cuidar a la selva.
that knowledge is a knowledge of taking care of the jungle.
Esa es la medicina
That's the medicine
para sanarnos,
to heal.
tanto las personas que viven en la selva y las personas que viven en las ciudades.
Be it the people in the jungle and the people in the cities.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Just wanted to add 3 key takeaways from today's discussion, which I'd like to thank everybody today for sharing your wisdom. I really liked your point, Paul, about the guardians of the rainforest and this ancient old ecosystem. That what translates perhaps to us as a takeaway is to value stewardship and not ownership. In rebuilding LA after disaster, what Manari is reminding us is to rebuild with reciprocity. And what David Attenborough has reminded us today is that is not survival of the fittest, but the survival of the most symbiotic.
Thank you. Yeah, I do think that, part of what's resonating for me is just the interbeing, the interconnectedness of it all. And I even noticed, the way that we're all talking, the way I'm phrasing, the way kind of some of the questions, it's so easy to kind of other the experience that's different from ours without even intentionally understanding it. And the more I'm noticing Manari's kind of the way that he even speaks about all of the different belief systems and the way that he's seeing and sensing our world is so much of wholeness, right? And I think for us in this world, in this country, I could just speak for the US, so much of it is about the individual contribution versus the collective being, as you were saying, Roberta. And I think if we could take away one thing, it's, who are we, who do we want to be, and how do we show up in the space that we want to occupy, but how do we do that in a way that is connected to everything else that we're doing and being? So with that, I'm gonna thank you all. I know we're at time. And I'm going to transition us into a moment of reflection for a quick second of if there was 1 or 2 things that resonated for you in our conversation today, jot them down. And if there's one action item that you can take towards realizing that one thing that resonated for you, discuss it amongst yourselves. I think we have probably 5 or 6 minutes to do more. 5 minutes to talk at our tables, and then we're going to go into the next moment together.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for bringing your attention back to the front. So, when I first visited the Amazon, I kind of thought the concepts and the way they live down there was foreign to me. But as I live more and more and I listen to science and other things, it just really resonates with me. Could we hold it down, please, in the back? Jolene? I think it was Roberta that used the term hospice, right? Lynn Twist also talks about how we as human beings and as nature, we're evolving together. We're not separate from nature. We're part of nature. And the oil companies, as you all know, are having to wind down. Let's get real. Not all of them are winding down. But I think the public dollars are forcing them, as we buy less and less gas, to wind down. And the oil companies, I think that they're dying, right? We won't be able to use all the reserves that they have in the earth right now. Otherwise, we'll burn up. And so she used a term called hospicing, right? If we hospice the oil companies, then they'll die faster and they'll die with less turmoil from us. And then as we midwife the newer ways, which is electrifying things, that's, I think, midwifing is a good way to understand that. Just recently, I was listening to, and you all have heard of multiple different books talking about how the trees communicate underground. Raise your hand if you've heard that, right? And so now we know also that scientists are working on communicating effectively with animals. I wonder what we'll be able to learn from animals about nature that we don't know about it. And the Earth has been back and forth between Ice Age and hothouse so many times. Biomimicry is the study, I think, of how we can use Earth's lessons to address human challenges. There's just so much more that I think we don't know. And how can we tap Manari's experience here, where they're still doing that? They're talking. They consider the plants and the animals to be their brothers and sisters. When Lynn Twist first went into the jungle, the shaman, and it might have been Manari, asked her if she could hear the souls of the plants and the animals as she walked through the jungle. I mean, how crazy is that? But they can do that. And I think we can learn to do that, and I think we need to learn how to do that as well. Just yesterday, Manari said that everybody's talking about AI and the powerful tool that it is, and he was wondering if that was the tool that would enable us to be able to speak more effectively with animals. I think we're probably that close to making that happen, and I just want to thank Manari for that wisdom. For me, it's been a mindset shift, and I think it will be for you too, as we can really clue into what he's saying, basically that the jungle over there is the jungle over here. It's not their jungle, it's all of our jungle. And we need to own the Amazon just as they do. So let's just go ahead and take 10 minutes for a break now, and then we'll reconvene. Thanks very much.